Hello and welcome to today's Partner Web Conference. This is Fast Track Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operations Enterprise Edition Tech Talk. Today's topic, Analytics and Reporting Options, Printing and the Document Routing Agent. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Senior R&D Solution Architect Eric Pegors. So without any further delay, Eric, over to you.
Thank you, Janice. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending. And we will get right into the material. Our objectives today are to learn about solution patterns and reporting experiences, and that really means choosing the right tool for the job. And then we'll also talk about how to print documents to an actual printer, a network printer, which involves a document routing agent. For the solution patterns, the real-time embedded visuals for operational insights leverages Power BI, and the analytical workspaces will put together embedded visuals like those and more traditional data. And then we'll talk about the data warehouse or data integration solutions, the bring your own database and the entity store. And then also there's more analytical solutions available via AppSource. And then for reporting experiences, we'll talk about the chart controls that you see in a lot of demos, SSRS reports, the traditional reports from finance and operations, and financial reporting, which used to be called Management Reporter, and electronic reporting, which used to be called General Electronic Reporting, I believe, GER. And like I said, still about half of it is about printing in the document routing agent. So we'll start with the solution patterns, and we're talking about a system of intelligence versus a system of integration. So the intelligence on the left involves the entity store, which is the star schema. It's summarized kinds of data that you can think of as, or one way to think of it is that it doesn't have any vouchers or that kind of detail in simple terms. And on the picture, you can see that the data goes in, the box in the middle is finance and operations, and the data goes into there. That would be through integrations or whatever. And then the Power BI and those things leverage that data. But I think it's kind of like the smaller database there is the AXDW database. And for the integration on the right, the database is your database on your Azure subscription, the bring your own database. It's in the product, it's called Entity Export to Database. And you can export AX data into that. Obviously, if it's your database, if it's just coming out of AX, there's little impact on AX. And then since it's your database, you can do absolutely whatever you want with that database once you have the data in there, including run stored procedures or get stuff from other legacy areas, or whatever you want. And this slide just talks about those things a little bit. Again, on the left, the system of intelligence, the data and intelligence is within finance and operations. And we have tools and frameworks for developers to leverage that stuff. And then there's also ISV solutions available. On the data warehouse, system of integration, you extract data out of finance and operations. And then, like we said, you can use whatever tools or frameworks you want because it's your database. You have complete control over it since it's a one-way out of finance and operations. There's no restriction. And then the customer and their partner are free to come up with whatever they want or need on that side. A little bit more at a high level here, the coming out of on the system of intelligence, you'll see that's where the embedded visuals come from, which is a part of analytical workspaces and the apps. And then the system of integration is pretty simple. It just centers around that database that gets data from AX and other places. And so a lot of the the data warehouse kinds of stuff and the system of intelligence stuff is relatively new. We're used to financial reporting. Electronic reporting is maybe a little less new, but it's also, those two are very specific. And the business documents is the SSRS reports, which are things that you want to print to paper, and typically high volume, and then other precision things like checks and stuff. But the data exploration, having charts and views in analytics, is a relatively new, and it's very powerful. So this is an example of one of those operational views. This is the credit and collections workspace from Finance and Operations 7.3, just with demo data. But you can see it has the charts, and obviously this was created by one of our developers. And it's a combination, like I mentioned before, of the analytical data in the charts and then transaction data for details. And the visuals are typically driven by aggregate data. That's the data without the vouchers, and typically coming from the data warehouse. In 30 seconds, those embedded visuals are created by a developer creating an aggregate measurement, and that's the star schema. And then you can use, which is a first-class citizen in finance and operations development, and so are aggregate data entities. I guess it's worth taking a minute here to say that both of these rely on data entities for for simplifying the finance and operations schema, which is quite complex, as you all know. And there is a difference in that the data warehouse things are the star schema, so they're more aggregated than the things in the data warehouse, but they do both rely on data entities. And then once you have your aggregate data entity, you can model the chart and put it on a workspace or a form. Financial statements with financial reporting has been around. It's always been here, but there have been quite a few improvements in the last couple of application releases. You'll see that there's the ability to generate from the finance and operations UI now, and there's the view options for the different instances of each report, like typically the instances are based on date, like in this example. So there are more things that you can do from the AX client than you used to be able to do. And there's also, of course, still the report designer, which is very powerful. And these slides have links on them. We will give a copy of the slides so that you can click on these links. Electronic reporting has also been around a while, and it's used for predefined electronic format for legal requirements, and it is also covers a lot of scenarios, and then you can also customize things. A good option for customizing is to start with one of the out-of-the-box ones that's close to what you need, and then make minimal customizations from there. But it's completely flexible. And again, it used to be called GER, but it's the same framework and capabilities. Okay, so the entity store is the AXDW database. It's included with finance and operations, doesn't cost you extra, and it is only allowed to use aggregate entities. Those are the summarized ones with the star schema, and there's some out of the box and you can write your own, and there's if you search in the finance and operations menu search, if you search for entity store, it'll come up where you can schedule the entities to be exported at a regular interval. You can set up a recurrence on those. And then the main scenario is that you connect Power BI to the database, and this is almost an exception where you are allowed to connect directly to the database. There's a procedure for doing that because of the speed, and because it's one way, right? It's read only, but so it can be near real time with those updates, and this is a area of where we're still improving, so you'll see more functionality and over time. This is a simple chart that shows how you can create your own, but you'll work on the a tier 1 is a dev machine, so you'll work on the entities and things behind the workspace and create the workspace. In Power BI, you can create the analytical part. You do need a Power BI license for that, and then it can be deployed to your tier 2 and prod. The other side of the earlier charts slides were the export data to your data warehouse. In the product, this is on the it's on the data management workspace, and it's configure entity export to database, and that's where you set up a connection to the database, and then that's your database in Azure, and then it shows up in the data management for export as an option, just like Excel or CSV at that point. So you can export the entities, either the ones, almost like around 2,000 out of the box, or custom ones. And there have also been some improvements in that area of the export. The most recent one, I think, is in Platform 12. They finally added the delete capability for entity export. So you used to have to full push if you were exporting something that had deletes in it. You'd have to do a full push once in a while. They fixed that. So, and again, this is also an area of growth, so there's more things being added in this area. But then once it's in the database that you own, obviously you can do whatever you want to or need to do, since it's your database, and it's pretty simple to keep the data updated from AX. Okay, so now we'll talk about just a little grid here of the reporting tools. So we have Excel, and you can use Excel with OData to any entity you want. That'll work. It'll work fine. Once the volume gets high, then that might be a factor, but it's available. And then we talked about embedded BI, where you have to have a developer do it, but then it uses aggregated data within the product, but it's available to anybody who you give access to that form or workspace. We're all familiar with the SSRS reports, again created by a developer. You can do transactional data, including vouchers or aggregated data, and the design is pretty much wide open. Whatever you can sort of fit on a piece of paper or on a PDF. Power BI we talked a lot about already, but it's pretty open and lets you look at the data in different ways quite easily, and that's one of the great strengths of it. And then financial reporting is also a power user, and specifically for financial related data. There were links throughout the presentation, and there's also some here about most of them relate to Power BI because it's so new, although we do have one for how to extend the out-of-the-box SSRS reports. And I was going to mention that for financial reporting, what comes out of the box uses main accounts and main account categories, and then of course it can be customized for your specific dimensions, but of course those can't come out of the box because they vary based on the customer. And like I said, the business intelligence stuff is an area where we're adding more and more. So there's the BI blog, the team's blog, where they announce things, and you'll see that down below here, that was one of the first places that the bring your own database, entity export to database was available. Now, of course, there is a help topic for it as well. So that is the first half of the presentation. I haven't seen any questions yet, so I think I'm going to start on the document routing agent, and we can take questions on either at the end, of course. So we're going to talk about interactive printing, which is printing from the user printing from their computer, sort of out of the box, with just the browser in their computer and whatever printer they may have connected to that their computer. Could be a local printer with a cable is one example. It could also be a network printer, but network printing that's more integrated is this network printing topic, where they can push print in finance and operations and it comes out of the network printer. The catch there is that without the document routing agent, you can't push print and have it come out on your printer that's on a cable, or if you don't have a document routing agent. We'll talk more about that. And then about the document routing agent in general, getting it configured and set up. So the scenarios for printing are that just printing what you see, you're used to in a browser, just doing Control P and what's on the page comes out. That does not work in finance and operations for technical reasons. I tried it last night just to refresh myself, and it was a big blank PDF that did not work. Did not have anything in it. So, but getting the business documents and SSRS kinds of reports on paper is what we're talking about. And again, that's either interactive printing or network printing when you're printing from within finance and operations. So interactive printing, you don't really have to do anything, but what you do have to do, any printer that's connected to the client's computer is available, but what you end up doing is downloading the report as a PDF, so it's right on on the user's computer, and then of course it's a file, PDF file, just like any PDF file. They can open it up, view it with their viewer, or they can print it to any connected printer. The good thing about this is that users will learn that printing it to the file and viewing it that way is faster to render. If they print it to the screen and then print it to the file, not only is the screen a little slower, but you also have to render it twice, once to the screen and once to the PDF file. So once you have that PDF on your local computer, you can do a lot with it, and it's generally faster to get it there. The downside is that some of these files contain sensitive data, and they are downloaded to the user's computer, which is the exact benefit. That's how you get the benefit. So there's some tension there, and that's why we have other options. But for a lot of things, this is a good move, and I have to say that I was skeptical, but that it would be like an extra step, and it technically is, I guess, an extra step, but it's pretty smooth, with the browser asking you to open the file and stuff like that. And I guess if the user opens the file instead of saving it, then the file gets cleaned up. So that's one option, but I have some slides here that show the progression. So you print a report just like anything. When the destination comes up, you set the destination to file, and then you pick your file format, and then you click OK, and after it renders, you get this dialog, and you can save it. I guess there is no open option on the file save. So on this example, I took these slides a little while ago, but they probably haven't changed, so I apologize for that. But anyway, you save the file, and then when it's downloaded, you can open it, and then you know what to do from there. Again, it's pretty smooth, but the files are on the computer. So then if that's, so then there's network printing, and obviously those computers are still connected to those printers are still connected to the user's printer, but in order to not have a file on the user's computer, what technically happens is, because finance and operations is in the cloud and it's not a part of the customer's network, there's got to be some way for the two to communicate, even though they kind of don't really know about each other. And so the document routing agent sits in between, and it basically watches. It's connected to the printers. It runs on a computer that is on the customer's network, and it has a connection, a login to the cloud, where it uploads what you want to print, or takes what you want to print from the cloud and down and sends it to the printer. So it's sort of in between the two, which it's in between these two things that don't know about each other. So that's what I said. The document routing agent sits on a computer on the customer's network and has a connection in the cloud. And you'll see those things. You install the document routing agent on that computer. You install the printers on that computer. The printers show up in the document routing agent. But the start of it is from the network printers. Then bug fixes with the platforms. So this is our plug to make sure you stay current on your platform. And whenever you switch platforms, you should uninstall the old document routing agent and install the new one. And here's a picture of what it looks like. There's the document routing agent on the corporate network. It's got some connections to the Azure, the cloud, where finance and operations is, and then there's the user connecting to finance and operations. And the user doesn't have to be connected to the corporate network, but it'll come out, the documents will come out on a printer on the network. So this is the document routing agent main window. Once you can see there's a sign out button, which means you had to sign in, and that is where it connects to the cloud. The settings is where you tell it, you enter the URL of your environment that you're printing for. So you can see that that's how it connects to the cloud, and we are and is running on the network, so that's how it gets access to the printers. You'll see that when you're setting it up, the document routing agent has a list of local printers local to the computer it's installed on. This was yeah. So you'll see all the printers technically, but of course the network ones are probably the most interesting. And we'll talk a little bit more later about why you would have some printers enabled on, why you would have multiple document routing agents, and why they would have not all printers enabled on all, or how you decide which printers to enable on which document routing agents. Yep, once you have it, set it up in the DRA, and I think it takes 3 minutes for a new printer to show up. They poll it every 3 minutes. The printer will show up in the network printers where you can enable it for each company. Yep. And then let's see here. And then the user experience that's the nice experience that we were looking for here, where on the printer screen in finance and operations, the printers that are enabled show up in the list, and you can obviously select the printer you want if there's more than one, and that's it, right? No file goes to your computer, it just goes out to the printer. So there's some considerations for the document routing agent. It's single-threaded, so it can only process one print job at a time. That could result in delays if a single DRA is servicing multiple busy printers. But we do have we have some FAQ at the end here, and there have been some changes and improvements made in this area, which makes the need for having multiple DRAs is now less than it used to be as of also Platform 12. And a single host computer can only support one document routing agent. So if you need multiple document routing agents, you're going to need multiple computers. These are, you can use any computer you want, but it has to be running Windows 8.1. Oh, the prerequisites are later on, but it has to be running the right operating system, and the DRA can run as a Windows service, or it may have to be running on the desktop for precision documents like checks. So again, the short story is that you need one computer for each document routing agent, and they can be fairly light machines, like people use Azure or AWS machines, but some of them also, it has to be running on the desktop for checks. And I think the other precision thing is like barcodes. Yeah, so the host computers has to be running Windows 8.1 or Windows Server 2012 R2. The printers have to be installed locally on that computer and must be installed by the same Windows account that installed that either is running the service or that's logged in when the document routing agent is on the desktop. These are important things. That's why they're here. Otherwise, you'll get inconsistent or it won't work at all if the security is not right, that the same user installed the printers and is running the document routing agent either on the desktop or as a service. And then the account used to log into the document routing agent, which is a finance and operations login. It has to be a finance and operations login, and it has to have the document routing client role. Right, so for precision documents like checks that I talked about, the how it does the exact precise documents is it actually renders it as a PDF and prints that, and that's why it needs to be why the Acrobat Reader needs to be installed on that DRA machine, and why it has to be running on the desktop. It does not support running the DRA as a service for precision documents. And the reporting team does know that that's not ideal, because if the computer reboots or something, then somebody has to go and restart the DRA. But I'm sure that there's an idea out there on the IDEA site, and that you should vote for it. But they're certainly aware of it, and I'm assuming they'll fix it. They'll change it if they can or when they can. Okay, so I guess I'll go through the FAQ here, which are some questions that we've heard before, and then we can open it up to general questions. Looks like we have plenty of time. So, are there capacity considerations? And prior to Platform Update 12, print jobs were processed first in, last out, which on a busy document routing agent would mean that you could wait a long time, and it wasn't a good design, but that's how it ended up. And eventually it was in Platform 12. It was finally fixed. It was a significant effort, I was told. I talked to the document routing agent people, the old solution we talked about was to use more document routing agents, but now that is less. We still recommend that you test your printing scenarios on UAT to make sure that things are moving as expected, but with first in, first out processing, a document routing agent can handle quite a few printers. One busy printer, it might still be a good idea to have it on its own document routing agent, because when it's handling multiple printers, it doesn't take it long to send the job. It doesn't have to wait for the job to physically print. It just has to spool it to the printer. But when it's a busy printer, it will end up having to wait for jobs to print, and that could block other printers that are less busy. And there was a capacity consideration in the early platforms before Platform 5, where the number of printers and companies affected the time it took for the DRA to even check for a print job. So if you had 10 printers and 10 companies, that's 100 combinations, and checking all those combinations internally could take it 30 seconds, which would mean that a job could take 30 seconds to print even if it was the only job. This was improved in Platform 5, and so most people are probably past it. But it could be a problem with because it's not supposed to take 30 seconds for one. If you only print one thing and it takes 30 seconds, that is not an ideal user experience. So I guess there's another reason to update your platform. Are there any extensions available? Yeah, there is a delegate where you can write a handler to put the printers in the list. And so what you would normally do is figure out some, or have a customization to note which printers should be used by which users, and then you can use this to consume that data and then only put the printers for the user that are applicable to a user in the list for that user. And that's nice for if you've got like a check printer that you don't want certain people using, or just in general, if you have a lot of printers. The customer who had the Platform 5 problem with the large number of printers and a large number of companies, obviously having like 50 printers in the list is not productive for users, and so they ended up writing a customization to filter the list because to be user specific, so they could configure which users were applicable to which printers. And this is how they did it. If you have a printer that is business critical or very busy, you can also register it on multiple document routing agent in case it may be able to pick up a job when the when the other document routing agents are busy, to keep things moving faster. And then I think I mentioned, is there a delay before a new printer can start printing? And it's the list of printers in the cloud is refreshed every 3 minutes. So there'll be a one-time delay of up to 3 minutes. I guess if you're a statistics person, it'll on average be a minute and a half, but it's a 3 minute, because that's not a frequent event, so it's not checked real often. And we have some pretty good documentation on the document routing agent in both the overall information, installing it, and then running it as a Windows service. And that is everything on for the slides. I see there are a few questions in the let's see here. Let's see. Craig had a question about on-premise deployments, and you can no longer send a report to the screen. Is this true? Oh, wait, there was a response. I haven't heard that this is the case before. If Eric doesn't know definitively, we will find out, and that I do not know, so we'll have to find out. So we'll capture a log of the comments, and we'll follow up on those. Larry asked about sending reports to email, and yes, there is some, I believe there is information, a help topic on that. You may be able to search the help site for email, but we can find that link for you, yes. Daisuke asked about the document routing agent, platform update 12, support up to 50 network printers. I think that before that, it really depended on how busy they were. I have a customer who has, it's that same customer with the number of printers and the number of companies problem, and they have not as many not as many printers as in this question, but they were using about, I think they have 2 or 3 document routing agents now. So so I would say that it was probably a good 20 or so before, but again, you really need to test, and because it all depends on how frequently things come, and as long as you're past platform 12 and you don't have the company and printer problem, because with a large number of printers in the question, that could have been a factor. But if you're past platform 12, I think that, I don't think that you have to have one document routing agent for every 25 printers. Depending on how many users, this customer that has all these printers, they are network printers, and they don't want the files on their users' computers, but basically every user has their own printer. And so that was kind of the scenario. So they're not terribly busy. And so especially, the platform 12 change would be good. And I can talk to the document routing agent team about this question and let you know as well, because it's a good question. Bill asked, one flaw that I've seen when printing precision documents is the retention of the Acrobat Reader settings from prior print jobs. If a PDF is printed in landscape format was the last thing printed, a check spooled afterwards will not print correctly. I have heard of that, and I think that I will have to ask the document routing agent team on that one too. I know that the versions of the PDF reader that you pay for have more capability in terms of the settings, but I know that most people use the free one, so that is Martin is going to answer that one. Yeah, go ahead, Martin.
Yeah, so when you're doing precision printing scenarios, as Eric was pointing out, it does use the Acrobat PDF reader to do the rendering. And by precision printing scenarios, we basically mean custom margins. So you typically see that on checks. But basically the trick is to go to the document routing agent, log in as the document routing agent user, of course, run Acrobat Reader, print something, anything, it doesn't really matter what the sample file is, and make sure you select actual size for the settings. And as long as you actually print it, then it should remember that as its previous setting. There really shouldn't be anyone else using the document routing agent computer, so once you have that set to the actual size, then you shouldn't have any weird scaling problems where you end up with something like a micro font on a check being scaled and then the bank doesn't like it anymore. So that would be our guidance there, is set it up as Eric says. If you're using the full Acrobat, you can actually save the setting. But the Acrobat Reader essentially remembers what the user last selected, and for precision printing scenarios, it's really always going to be actual size. Beyond that, any changes you make to fit it on a page or something like that should really be changes to your SSRS design, not using the scaling inside Acrobat, because that'll just cause you other problems.
Does actual size, the question also asked about portrait or landscape.
That I have not tried.
Okay, yeah,
again,
we can check on that.
I would think you generally want to leave the settings on there alone once you have them established, and do whatever you need to do with the SSRS design.
Yep, and we'll yep, that sounds good, and we'll make a note to check on that as well. But that should answer most of it. I don't see any other questions. So I think that we are done. I thank you very much for attending. We hope you found it useful. And again, the recording and the slide deck will be available.
All right, thank you, Eric. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to take a moment and bring your attention to a link that I just posted in the messages panel. That's a link to a short survey for this web conference, and we ask that you please take a moment before logging out to access it. We hope that you found today's information helpful, and if you enjoyed today's web conference or have feedback on how we can provide you with a better event, this is your chance to let us know. The survey scores are on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest score possible. And that is going to conclude today's web conference. As Eric mentioned, attendees may access the web conference recording via the same registration link used to attend today's live broadcast. I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenter, Eric, and thank you, audience, for logging in and joining us today.